And we are recording with Mr. Jeff Nyquist on Monday, February 10th, 2025 at 12:41 p.m. Eastern. I don't know, this 16 years ago today, I was in high school and I got off probation for getting caught underage drinking. And I just remember this date because I was finally off probation and I was no longer grounded. So I don't know why that's it's yeah.
Oh,
Um, uh,
it's an occasion.
it is. Hey man, going to private Catholic school, strict parents, you get caught drinking. You get caught drinking by police. I mean, you're essentially Bin Laden in their eyes. So I just remember this. I was finally free. Um, but yeah, for everybody listening, we were just talking that there's so much going on right now. It's hard to keep track. We're what, maybe 3 weeks into the new Trump term, and I mean, it's news cycles are moving in like 12-hour increments right now. I mean, shifting in 12-hour increments in terms of just how much things are changing. And I think the
Yeah,
most recent shift I saw was last night during the Super Bowl. Somebody had tweeted, per Elon Musk, the Department of Education no longer exists. But I saw someone else say that has to be approved by Congress or something. So I mean, but even that is just like there's the last 24 hours. Like the DOE is no more, which I don't care about. Not Department of Energy, Department of Education. But that's kind of how quick everything's moving. But for everybody listening, please go in the description. You can go buy Jeff's books. You can go follow him on Twitter. He's been on here multiple times before. It's been a minute since we caught up, but I'm just gonna hand it over. And he's one-upping me. He is totally. First day of prison, you go in and you kill the biggest guy to establish dominance. He's come on my podcast with an AI tracking camera that zooms in on him and follows him, and he's completely put me to shame. He just pulled up at the stoplight and revved his engine, and he just left me in the dust. So he has out alpha mailed me. This is his podcast now. That's the laws of the jungle. So welcome to Jeff's podcast.
Oh no, Tommy. No. Um, yeah, it's the new Trump administration is bewildering because we have been in the Biden uh we you could call it the Biden dead zone, right? You got a guy who's falling down, he's not managing things, you don't know who's managing it. You're hearing the patter, the pitter patter of the nonsense that is told, the political correctness, the lies. The border is wide open. You got millions of people coming into the U.S. You've got supposedly he's supporting Ukraine. And this is what I think I said this on your podcast before. This is the controversy that's emerging, but Washington seems to want to kill it. The controversy is that Zelensky came out and said, "Look, you guys supposedly gave us 177 billion in aid, and we only got 70, what did he say,
I,
75
I
billion,
think it's
whatever.
at
So this,
77. It's roughly 100 missing.
yeah, 77. Yeah, it's roughly 100 billion that is missing. And of course, on the 6th, General Kellogg made an interesting statement, which doesn't, I've talked to people that worked inside the Pentagon and people that worked in Kiev. And I was hearing this 2 years ago. I probably said that we're not giving to Ukraine what we're claiming to give. But you get this explanation which Kellogg gave, which is a sign that there's a problem. He said, "Look, we keep track of every penny," he says. "Huh, at the Pentagon, really?" And then he says that we used it for internal, for building, for making the ammunition, for, I guess, building the infrastructure for the ammunition. Well, don't you think the Ukrainians aren't counting dollars, they're getting stuff, and they're
Mhm.
counting the value of the stuff they're getting, right? So even if you're building a couple arms plants and the money's going for that, Ukrainians can do the math. They're not stupid. And in fact, when Biden was claiming all these things for him, these are the two things I heard is that privately they were pissed. They were angry. The 70 something billion that they were getting. They were grateful and very desperate to have that. So they're not going to blow that by saying,
Sure.
"Why are you inflating what you're giving us?" And then I heard on the American side from somebody who had worked in the Pentagon who was connected that the procurement people were saying, "We don't understand this. This is not what's going out the door." We don't know why these people are coming and giving these exaggerated claims of what we're sending over there, claims of what we're sending over there. So now Kellogg gets up and he says, "Oh, well, that money was spent internally to send things over to them." 100 billion? I don't know. I think Kellogg has to be careful. And what I am hearing is that they're looking at this. And so, because the United States government doesn't want to destroy the public's faith in the process, but you already have this interesting thing where we're going, Elon Musk is going after this. We're going to have accountability of where money goes. When they shut down USAID, we're finding out what, a $500 million here? It's not quite a $500 million. Disappearing where? Where is it going? To left-wing organizations, to communists, to enemies of the country? So how many NGOs, how many programs are leaking, are bleeding out US tax dollars to our enemies, both foreign and domestic, right?
Hmm. It's
I mean, how come the left is so flush with cash? The anti-American left I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people on the left that love their country. I'm talking about the anti-American left.
You're asking why do they have it or why
How
do they
come
need it?
they're flush with cash? Yeah. Yeah, what are they doing? I mean, we've had this incredible propaganda coming from every direction about the xenophobic, racist people who want to close the border. Wait a minute. Every single country has a regulated border. I can't just walk into Mexico without a visa or without ID and reside there. I can't go in. When I went into Canada, you should have seen the grilling I got from the guy at the border, the uniformed border guy. It's like, where are you going? What event is this? What hotel are you staying at? Right? That's what I got on the Canadian border. So every country regulates its border. They're not going to let anybody in, but we have to have an open border. Everybody has to come. And you've got these mafias, these drug cartels, these human smugglers, and they basically organizing enormous groups of people, just like they did in Europe, by the way, 10 years ago, when you had this massive number of Muslims pushed into Europe. And I did a paper on this with a European researcher. We interviewed former government ministers from European countries, and they said, look, this is Putin's revenge. This is the FSB or SVR, what we used to call the KGB, the Russian mafia, the Turkish mafia. And they're moving these people out of the Middle East and out of Africa, and they're flooding them into Europe. Well, that's a form of warfare, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if you push millions of people who are not Europeans, who have a completely different religion, different culture, different everything, and you push them and what's happening in Germany now? You got these knivings. You hardly hear about it. Where these Muslims on the street come up and they try to slit your throat. All of a sudden the hand pops up and they're going for your neck.
Yeah.
And if you're a racist, if you talk about it in Germany, right? I talk to my German friends, they go, "Oh yeah, it's getting scary here. The crime, I mean, look, people who are really different from each other, and this is not racism, they don't mix well. And it's just
No, not at
common
all.
sense. It's
No,
common
not
sense to have borders, right?
no, it's not racist, but I'd also not for you in particular. But I would also push back and say, yeah, and don't even preface it anymore by saying this is not racist. Like I don't think they even deserve that prefix. The people that support this shit and the people that do it, they don't deserve the preface of I'm not. I know I'm not, and my actions show I'm not, and I don't care what. The same way I don't start off a podcast by saying, and by the way, I'm not gay. Like
Right.
no one suspects that. Like whatever.
By the way, I'm not a Nazi, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. So they don't even just over the course of this 5 years podcast. I mean, I don't even preface it with that anymore. I don't need to defend that. No, it's a very you have to respect your enemy. It's a very advanced form of warfare. You gotta tip your hat.
Yeah.
You build up public sentiment and propaganda through all these NGOs, through government funding. That's how you evade the First Amendment in the U.S. You don't need to do that abroad, but in the U.S. evade the First Amendment. In other nations, you just push it through NGOs and different independent news outlets. And we say we have to do this. We have to bring these people in. We have to assimilate them. And then what those people do is that they're removed from this entire civilization. You don't have to like it. They don't have the same IQ as people. They don't have the same respect or traditions. It's not one on one. It's not somebody from France coming to the United States. It's just not. You don't have to like it. You can call it racist. It's just not. In the same way that you can't bring in an undomesticated animal. It's just what it is. And they come in and they destroy, they disproportionately rape, they disproportionately kill. And you know what, man? It's, hey, if your goal in life is to help these people and you think it is your obligation to increase the quality of their, hey, God bless you and good on you. But go do it through the Peace Corps, do it through the UN ship. Let's just say the UN, do it through Red Cross, do it through Doctors Without Borders. But to bring it here is a form of warfare. The people doing this to you, it's not an accident that it's destroying your civilization. And then, so
Yeah.
why are these leftist organizations flush with cash? What you said earlier. I mean, there's two questions. It's why do they have it and why do they need it? Why do they have it is because there are people in government that hate you, and this is a form of modern warfare. It's not tanks and bullets, it's immigration. Why do they need it? Because if what's the quote? If the situation was hopeless, the propaganda wouldn't be necessary. In that same vein, these are wildly unpopular ideas for the obvious reasons I just stated. They're not compatible. So therefore, you have to propagandize it. No one, you don't need propaganda to say, I don't know, McDonald's is good. It just is. The same way, you do need propaganda to say open the borders. You're a Nazi if you don't want 150 trillion Africans in your city. It's just they're not, they're very obviously not popular ideas because they result in crime and rape and a dissolution of society. Therefore, you need to propagandize it. And these things don't arise naturally because they're not naturally competitive ideas in the marketplace of ideas. So you have to suppress them. Just like you have to suppress
Yes.
the naturally interesting things. We were talking before the show, early on when I got destroyed on the podcast talking about election fraud and COVID missing, where did COVID come from and COVID vaccine injury. You have to suppress ideas that are naturally popular. In the same way, you also have to boost up ideas that are pure shit. So that's why, and it's amazing to see. I was pretty pessimistic. I had no idea just how bad it was through USAID. It's incredible. It really is incredible just how much of, and it's not even from like, a leftist billionaire where you go, well, it's his own money. He can do what he wants. This is from your government. They're pushing this stuff. And in the same way that I don't think it's, I fully believe it's coming now in that we saw the whole USAID thing. So that's, you have to prop up unpopular ideas. I fully believe we're going to find out in the coming, who knows, hours or days or weeks that there's going to be some mass network on also shutting down ideas. So I don't know where that's going to come from. I don't know what censorship programs they're going to uncover, but I'm pretty positive that's going to happen now. Sorry, I know I was rambling. Jeff, I think you're frozen.
No,
Oh, there you
it's
are. No, you're just staying still. All
yeah,
right, there
can
you
you
are.
see me? Yeah, yeah. My internet connection was suddenly unstable. Is
No,
it
you're good.
stable again? Good.
No, you're good.
Yeah, no, the real question, and people always have this in their mind, is where is this coming from?
Wait, you froze up. Yeah, your internet's unstable. I'll text you.
Who is doing this? Who's you look at we talked about the pandemic later and the problems with the vaccines. Those vaccines weren't taken in Cuba or North Korea, China or Russia or Iran. Those vaccines were taken in the West. The golden billion that Vladimir Putin sarcastically refers to, that's us. The golden billion they want to destroy. And the thing is that look, it's very simple and nobody sees it. It's in plain view. Russia and China, Cuba, North Korea, what are they? They're core communist countries. They were what we used to call the communist bloc. And you look at this and you go, oh, but Putin's not a communist. Well, he's giving, you know, large amounts of grain every year to Cuba, communist Cuba. He's got troops helping to prop up the regime in Venezuela, a communist regime. He's got engineers building military infrastructure in communist Nicaragua. Daniel Ortega, hello. He's the Sandinistas are Marxist-Leninists. He's got North Korean communist troops fighting on his front in the war with Ukraine. He's getting machine tools from China, and China's propping up his economy right now. China's a communist country. Wait a minute, when you get done doing this list, you're going, wait a minute, Putin's a communist. And it makes perfect sense when Putin, on the anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, goes to Sochi and makes this, not quite the keynote address, I think it was the opening address, to the World Festival of Youth and Students, which is the largest communist youth organization in the world. And I don't know what there were, 50,000 communist youth from around the world. And he says, you are the future. We are behind you. We believe in you. Putin's a nationalist? He's not a communist? Saying that in front of the largest communist youth organization? And who noticed, right? And there's this studied attempt to not move the camera onto these events. Nobody, I don't see anyone on the news saying, wait a minute, Russia is really ruled by the same old communist elite. They just took the hammer and sickle off the door and they put the Russian flag up. But that's what they did. They changed street names. Leningrad became St. Petersburg, but the essence didn't change. And what happened was to create a communist capitalist economy, they took KGB officers and specially recruited KGB agents to be oligarchs. Some of the oligarchs are actually former KGB generals. But I've been told by disgruntled KGB people, by people from there, that all the oligarchs signed agreements with the Communist Party Soviet Union, now underground, and the KGB, that they were just stewards of this money for them. That they're not. It's like you make a Nestle's Quick chocolate milk. You just add the contract, stir, and you got an instant Russian billionaire. But they're under the Soviet Union, there were no Russian billionaires. They had to create them. Why do so many Russian billionaires fall out of windows and die, or they go nuts and kill their whole family and kill themselves? Or, I mean, how many have fallen out of windows or hang themselves in the shower like Boris Berezovsky? I mean, read the book From Russia with Blood. Why do they die? Because they find themselves cornered, and the minute the KGB starts distrusting them and thinking that they're embezzling the money, this paranoia develops, and they're on the track to having their throats slit. So Guzinski gives up his media empire and his other businesses. He flees to Israel. And the thing is that the oligarchs either have a good relationship with Putin, Putin is a KGB colonel who was running all the businesses out of Leningrad, running the KGB operation as a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, right? So Putin ends up being the guy on top. He's doing the same thing. He was doing the same thing for Russia in general. So you got this great book here. I'm going to show people this book came out in the late 90s. Russia's Secret Rulers. Okay, this is by Lev Timofeyev. And in this book, he says, look, there's only two theories to explain what's happening in Gorbachev and Yeltsin's Russia and Soviet Union. And that is either the mafia has taken over the country or the KGB, which controls the mafia because it controls the security system controls all the prisons where all the criminals are. And in Russia, guess what? There's no Bill of Rights. If they even suspect you of a crime, they'll force a confession out of you by torturing you and put you in prison. So the criminals have the real power in Russia was always the secret police. And by the way, since every economic activity was illegal in the Soviet Union, and everybody was technically who engaged in any kind of business was in the black market and organized criminal, the key to understand is that all organized crime, and this includes the United States, is organized by the police and the political officials. That's what organizes organized crime. Think about it this way. During Prohibition in the United States, the best bottle of scotch was in the home of the mayor of Chicago. And all those policemen who stood on the beach and watched Al Capone unloading the liquor from Canada, all those policemen were sending their kids to private schools and to colleges with the money they were getting from that. Okay? That's organized crime. And we think of Al Capone as the big shot. The reality is that the minute government has control over economic activity, the government officials involved in that, wait a minute, we can make money now because we have a monopoly, we have the guns, and anybody who wants to sell cocaine or liquor under prohibition has to do it through us. They have to kick back up to us. And guess what we can do? We can rub them out. We can have a shootout with them, an altercation, and who can say otherwise? Because we have hundreds of police officers with guns, right? What do they have? I mean, Al Capone's gang, line them all up next to the police. Who has more guns, right? So the reality is in the Soviet Union, it wasn't just liquor like in prohibition in the United States to cause the corruption. Every single kind of economic activity was illegal under the Soviet Union. Everybody had to work for the state, but then everybody started moonlighting. How did that happen? How was it allowed that everybody, that you had this huge underground economy? It was the secret police. And see, this is what Putin, what they realized is, all right, well, let's just bring the underground economy into the open. Our KGB managers of that economy will be the bosses, and we'll make the West think we're capitalist. But it's a weird kind of system. It's a police state. That's why it's run by a policeman, a KGB lieutenant colonel named Putin. And this is what people don't understand about what's happened in the world because we're talking about people moving across the border. It's not just people coming across our border, it's fentanyl, it's drugs, it's cartels. And you read the Los Angeles Times and you find these little passages where, well, the Mexican mafia or the cartels are working with the Russian mafia, and the Russian mafia is sort of the master mafia, right? The Russian mafia in league with the Russian intelligence services. And you go back to a book called Red Cocaine by Joseph D. Douglas Jr. in the late 80s. I mean, the footnotes in that book, the congressional investigations that uncovered things, the testimony. Russia and China had gotten into the drug business. They were controlling 2/3 of the global illicit narcotics industry and the mafias that go with it. You go to Lenin's Tomb by David Remnick. You go to the end of that book and you'll find he has an interview with the head of the Italian Parliamentary Committee of Inquiry into the Mafia. And this guy tells him all three of the major mafia groups in Italy, the Sicilian, Calabrian, and Neapolitan mafia, were all going to Russia and being coordinated by the Russians and attending seminars in Russia. He says Russia is now the capital of international organized crime. When did this book come out? 1993, 92? He got the Pulitzer Prize for it, David Remnick. So it's these nuances that contain the keys to understanding what's been happening to us these last 30 years since the so-called fall of the Soviet Union.
It's kind of a the one thing you said kind of got me thinking of, yeah, I mean, think of how much goes around whenever something is illegal here, most notably alcohol and then, marijuana or cocaine and the racket that builds around it. Yeah, what happens when you criminalize all economic activity? I never
Yeah.
thought about it that way. Like what happens when it's just as illegal to go buy food as it is to buy alcohol?
Yeah, the
That's kind of a
police,
wild perspective, yeah.
yeah, the police and the Communist Party Soviet Union become the organizers of the crime.
Absolutely. And
This is what one of the first books, Vaxberg, I think was his name, on the Soviet mafia, which came out very courageously in the late 80s in the Gorbachev period. I mean, they put a hit out on him. He barely survived. But his book on how the mafia process worked from the local party structures it's just a fascinating. I mean, if you want to see it up close. And it's none of it, if from a sociological point of view, none of it is unexpected. And so let's fast forward to the United States. The minute the Soviet Union fell and these black market structures, which Gorbachev had been capitalizing and bringing out the KGB and party money. Their their main thing was to make that money flow into the West, flow into Western Europe and the United States and Canada. Why? So they could buy up businesses and extend their form of capitalism, which involves dark money, bribery, money laundering, and all of the the Soros Fund, all of the laundered red cocaine money
He froze up.
that is flow kinds of criminal activities, human trafficking, pedophilia. You think the pedophilia originated here? There's always been some pedophilia, of course, organized networks. But the KGB went into this business in the 1970s of organizing pedophile networks. Why? And this takes us right to you look at Robert Maxwell, who died suspiciously, what, falling off of his yacht after the fall of the Soviet Union. He had been here, according to sources already published, setting up Soviet front companies here in the U.S. shortly
Yeah, what
before
was
his
it?
death.
Was it
And his daughter,
media?
Ghislaine,
Yeah, what were
what's
the
it?
there was a name of I don't remember what was it, like a search engine or something they had built? There was I can't
Oh yeah,
um
Promise, right?
no they named it after an explorer.
Yeah.
Magellan? There was some no, but sorry, I'm getting
Oh yeah,
sidetracked.
yeah, no, no. I'm trying
Or
to
was
think
it
of
a
it. Yeah, they were
was it a
involved in
G?
this.
I don't
It
remember what
was
it
a it was a it
was.
was this advanced software system. Yeah, I
No, I'm
I
getting
know
into the
what you're
weeds. It's not
talking
important,
about.
but yeah, no, he's over here putting roots
But
in.
anyway, it's funny that his daughter, okay, and it's I mean it was there were some sources in Russia that said, "Oh yeah, he's ours." Maxwell was ours. And of course, people say, "Oh, he was a Mossad agent." Well, a person can be an agent of more than one power. But it's interesting. Ghislaine Maxwell is with Jeffrey Epstein, and there's a funny connection there because you got Lolita Island and you've got this, and the funny way that Epstein died in jail, right? So these the real problem is the extent to which this corruption has enveloped our society over the last 30 years. Because once the floodgates were open, once the West opened to the now fallen Soviet Union, the flood of this corruption and the corrupt ways of doing things. Because if you're the KGB and you control a mafia and you're infiltrating organized crime, by the way, since 1960, when they started Operation Friendship of Nations, which was the name Khrushchev gave to their campaign of flooding the West with drugs, recreational drugs, illicit narcotics, that once now you've prepared the ground strategically. And not only that, this laundered money creates the basis for supporting revolutionary organizations, for supporting terrorists, because there's a linkage between this criminal activity and money laundering and terrorist organizations, because where do they get their money, right? This is where they get their money. And so this is what we've been up against. And what people didn't realize about 9/11 was, and this is going to be denied by people, but Alexander Litvinenko, the Russian FSB defector, who was murdered with polonium-210, no doubt that came from Russia. He
Hmm.
was murdered by Putin. Anybody who denies this has got a crack in their brain because polonium-210 is so expensive, and the only people in the world that manufactured enough of it, the amount found in his body, was the Russians.
Yeah.
Nobody
Even
else makes this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, no.
You know,
Most liberal case you could say it's at least nation state. And by the way, I
right?
live downtown, so I'm gonna mute myself because there's a lot of sirens, but keep going.
Oh, I don't hear the sirens, but
Oh,
so
okay. All right. Well, that's
What
good
does
then.
Litvinenko say in 2005 with the London Al Qaeda bombings? When Putin is meeting, I think in Scotland with Tony Blair, with the G8. Litvinenko says, you're all busy fighting Al Qaeda and the terror, but the terror master is meeting at the G8, and his name is Vladimir Putin. He's behind the terror. And Litvinenko reveals, look, I was responsible for keeping secret the presence of Ayman al-Zawahiri, bin Laden's number one lieutenant, in Russia in 1996, when he trained there, right? So this is what Litvinenko is telling the world. It was picked up by the Polish press. They did an interview with him, which was has been taken offline since then. I think it was the London Times he talked to as well, and he'd fed some things to a guy that wrote a story on the about this earlier on the Wall Street Journal, the first version that appeared, and they didn't cite him as a source. But it was Litvinenko was screaming to say, "Look, I'm frustrated. I told MI6, I told MI5, I told the British intelligence, I told the American intelligence about this, and they're not listening to me. So I want to." So he's going to tell the public. 15 months later, they poison him with polonium T. The guy's got so much radiation in his body, his hair falls out. He dies 3 weeks later. They poison him like on November 1st, 2006. And and so the thing is, they killed him for saying this, right? Because they don't want any. And here's the thing, Tommy, about the corruption that scares me, is that I watched all the documentaries, all the major networks did documentaries about Litvinenko, and not one of them mentioned that he'd said Putin and the FSB were behind Al Qaeda, that this was a long term, that many Al Qaeda top officials were trained in Russia. And then on top of it, you've got the Magnificent 19 who did the 9/11 bombing. You've got Mohammed Atta, who was a student in Hamburg. Of course, the German mayor of Hamburg is a communist, and they just kind of don't watch these people. But there's this curious story from my Czech sources, from a former Czech intelligence guy who told me that Mohammed Atta was trained in 1987, secretly trained in 1987, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, in a communist terrorist training camp in Czechoslovakia. And that it's very funny, in the year before 9/11, Mohammed Atta made like what, 2 or 3 trips to Prague, to Czechoslovakia. And later, the American press tried to make this thing he was meeting with Saddam Hussein officials in Prague. Don't think so. See, I'm putting it together. I mean, I don't know, but I'm thinking probabilistically here. So, and all of this is studiously ignored. Studiously ignored. So when somebody like Edward J. Epstein hears about this and he goes to Czechoslovakia to check it out, my Czech friend said he didn't talk to us. He talked to all these people that we know are Russian agents. He got misled. So it's very hard to even investigate this stuff. And you have to be very patient, and you have to wait, and you have to watch. So this corruption that envelops us. You look at Biden, you look at Hunter Biden's laptop. Biden pardons his whole family before leaving the White House? Is that not, I mean, if he's innocent, why would he do that? And what is this corruption, this money that the Biden family got? Where did the Obamas get all their money? I mean, these people are public servants all their lives. How do they get so much money? You know, how do all of these leading Democrats? Now, I'll tell you, Tommy, something, and this is a direct experience that I had. When I was postgraduate, I was getting a teaching credential. My master teacher invited me to a meeting. I didn't know she was a communist. I didn't know it was a communist meeting. I go to the meeting at the science lecture hall that evening, and there's this Marxist-Leninist speaker about overthrowing the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie in America and how what the Communist Party's plan is. The idea is, of course, to create a massive depression in the United States where everyone loses faith in the capitalist system and everything can be turned over into communism. And he talks about electing a stealth communist president. We're going to elect a stealth communist president. And of course, I'm here listening to this, but what else did he say? He said, we're taking over the Democratic Party. Now, this is 1983. It was March of 1983. He said, we're taking over the Democratic Party through its left wing. This is what he said. Now, you look at all these people. You look at Kamala Harris. You look at the work, for example, of Trevor Loudon. Kamala Harris has all
I,
these.
I
She
had
she
him
grew
on a
up with
couple
the,
months ago. He's a cool
yeah.
guy.
I mean, all the communist background to Kamala Harris, and by the way, Barack Obama, who was, according to his one of his fellow students at Occidental, he was a radical communist revolutionary at Occidental. So when did exactly he have the epiphany and stop being a communist? Where was that in Dreams of My Father? that, oh, I was a communist, but I changed. I don't see that anywhere. See, when you have people who are communist revolutionaries who work for the cause, like Whittaker Chambers or Elizabeth Bentley, you've got this coming out where they say, I had this thing. I was a communist. I worked against the United States. This is what I did. I realized it was wrong, that communism is evil. No, there's nothing like that. You've got David Horowitz wrote Radical Sun, explaining why he changed sides, why he started to vote for Reagan, right? You've got people who actually change, but they have to explain, and they lose all their friends when they flip over. But Obama starts his political career in the living room of Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn, who were violent communist revolutionaries, the Weather Underground, bombing people.
Hmm.
Bernardine Dorn was supposedly involved in the bombing that killed a policeman in California. So these are communists, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn. They've never renounced it. They've never apologized for it. And so this is very disturbing. And in fact, his first seat in the Illinois legislature was given to him by a lady who was, by all appearances, pro-Soviet at the time. This is in the 1980s. So taking over the Communist Party, it's, you look at it, you look close up at Biden. There's Vladimir Bukovsky was a leading dissident from the Soviet Union. He was like, what was it, 9 or 11 years in Soviet prisons and psychiatric hospitals. He got out quite freakishly. He got himself in front of a camera when he was about to be arrested another time of a Westerner out in Moscow, and he got attention, and he ended up in Switzerland. He ended up getting out to the West. And I had a chance to talk to him, but he had an archive of things that he had smuggled out of the Communist Party Soviet Union archive, which included Central Committee notes on Joe Biden when he was a senator. In 1979, Joe Biden met with this Central Committee official when he was leading this U.S. Senate delegation to Moscow, and he said, "Look, I'm not against you. I'm your buddy, but I have to make anti-Soviet noises. I have to, rap you on the knuckles for your human rights abuses, but I don't really care. I'm really your friend." This is this note. And anybody can go and look at the Bukovsky file archive. They can see it in the original Russian. They can look to see if the translation's correct. This is Biden. So Biden, there has to be a kind of a blackmail on him, and is
Absolutely.
taking money from the mayor of Moscow's wife, taking money from the Chinese, his family, and then pardoning them. So see this envelopment of corruption that I'm talking about. It goes all the way to the top, and it has been what we've been in the grip of. And when people talk about the deep state, I think that's what it is. It's the communist movement. It's these enemy countries who are, what's the communist movement? It's a it's a mechanism created by the Third International out of Moscow by Stalin, by Lenin and Stalin, and and it's coming out of Beijing now, and there all these countries are still operating it, and it's disguised. We don't always see it. It's Black Lives Matter. We care about black people. No, these people that run that are communists, right? They're saying you're a racist if you oppose us. So it's like people get intimidated. Oh, we don't dare say that's communist because then we'll be racist. Because if you say these people are communists, you're a racist, right? We've been over that ground. So this is how they intimidate people and they get away with it. And then, the FBI doesn't watch communists anymore. That's more than 30 years ago. They stopped doing that. I think they stopped doing that more than 40 years ago. They stopped investigating people. The internal enemy, literally the internal enemy, this is their playground. America's their playground, the domestic enemy. That's how
But
they can get to be president.
when it's the right move, I mean, you just gotta, if you were them, how would you do it? Hey, tell everyone where to find your Twitter. I gotta use the restroom and refill my water bottle because my throat's on fire. Tell everyone where to find you.
All right. Jrnyquist.blog, JRNYQUIST.blog. And that stupid camera. just went nuts on me. How did that happen? JR Nyquist, JRNYQUIST.blog. Um, and of course, my Amazon page, there's books. I recommend The Fool and His Enemy as the first book because it's pretty inexpensive. It's a little paperback. You can read it in 3 hours. You can get The Lies We Believe In. You can also get The New Tactics of Global War. Then the books that I did with Cliff Kincaid, Red Jihad, and Back from the Dead, Return of the Evil Empire. So those books are all on Amazon you can get. And right now I'm not selling Origins of the Fourth World War, but you can, it's very expensive to get a copy of that. But I will be selling those again if people request. My website again, JRNYQUIST.blog. Um, to try to describe this problem that we have of how corruption meets organized crime meets ideological subversion. This system was created by it was thought up in the 1950s and continually organized and perfected in the 60s, 70s, and 80s by think tanks and institutes in the Soviet Union because they have this massive intellectual machinery infrastructure in Russia and also in China for studying us. In the Soviet Union, the Institute of USA and Canada Studies, Georgy Arbatov was the head of that for many years. He'd been an advisor to Stalin. He came to my school at UC Irvine in 1988, about a year before the Berlin Wall came down. And Georgy Arbatov said, "We have a secret weapon. We are taking away the image of your enemy." Here, a year before the fall of the Berlin Wall, he's saying, "We're going to take away the image of your enemy." And that's what they did. So we know if we track, there's the KGB defector Anatoly Golitsyn, who wrote a book in 1984 saying they're going to fake the collapse of communism, but it's all they've prepared underground and criminal structures to run everything, to infiltrate you, to destroy anti-communism. So see, Tommy, to get back to this criminal thing, this criminal structure that the Russian special services, their think tanks, their KGBs, their mafias helped to create in the West, to give them control in the West, it you might ask, well, why don't they own the world? Why hasn't this given them victory yet? And this is an important question because people say, "Oh, Nyquist, you think that they're like 10 feet tall and they can do everything." No, I don't. They're really bungling because psychopaths have mental deficits.
Hmm.
Malignant narcissists don't see reality correctly. They're halfway to being outside of reality in their thinking. They're grandiose. They have delusions, delusions of grandeur. So they stumble all the time. So, like this KGB, this disgruntled former KGB official told me, he said, "We had this great plan. We were going to unify Germany and destroy NATO, but it partly backfired on us," right? And what was the big weakness, the Achilles heel of the Soviet Union? It was Ukraine, was the Achilles heel. Because the Ukrainians, they didn't want to be under Moscow. And they were willing to fight, as we can see now, to be independent, to have their own country. And this was always the danger. And then there was the fact that they used corruption. Their system, the communist system became a police mafia state so that the reality versus the grandiose, we're going to bring socialist paradise to the world, the reality was very different than the grandiose self concept, right? So there's this is where you get, it's so important to understand psychopathy, to understand disconnect, disassociation and disconnect from reality. There is with every dictator, whether it's Hitler, Stalin, Putin, Mao, there's somewhere there's a disconnect with reality. And people cannot be fully effective as people when they're disconnected from reality. And so this is the invasion of Ukraine stumbling and Russia not being able to win the war. This is Russia having 5 missile launches and the missiles blow up on the launch pad or go off course. 5 failed, so they have to fire the guy. This is Russia thinking they're going to have 1,000 Armada tanks. And wait a minute, we only have 100. What happened to all the Armada tanks to form the two guards tank armies? Where are they? Stolen,
Yeah.
kleptocracy,
Yeah.
corruption, right? So they're not 10 feet tall. They have these brilliant schemes and this corruption, they've corrupted us, right? You see Biden, you see there's a fascinating, and the Clintons are part of this, I believe. The Clinton Foundation, all the way the Clinton Foundation had to kind of go hide in the corner and whatever happened to them and where was the investigation and what went on there. Um, you go to Bill Clinton's last meeting with Boris Yeltsin. And this is you can go to the Bill Clinton Presidential Library and you can go online and you can get this up. I'm not lying. This was declassified in 2018. It's a transcript of Bill Clinton's last face-to-face meeting with Boris Yeltsin in December 2018. In December 1999. And at that meeting, it's very strange. Boris Yeltsin is very focused on putting Clinton on the defensive. You didn't do this for us. You didn't do that. Look, you let this, you're talking about getting out of the ABM treaty and stuff. And Clinton's going, no, 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 I'm stopping them. I'm stopping them. And then finally, in this transcript, Yeltsin says, Bill, I still believe in you. But we need one thing from you. Give Europe to Russia. It's right there in black and white. And he says to Clinton, look, you're not European. We are. We're a Eurasian country. So Europe should be ours. We can defend Europe. You go defend these other countries. But Europe is ours. And Bill Clinton is like, you're Eurasian? Does that mean you control Asia too? You know? And Yeltsin just goes right past that. He's using the Eurasian argument, by the way, which Alexander Dugin has been propagating throughout the world for the last 30 something years. So you read that transcript and you go, what is going on there? Well, here's my interpretation. People could say, oh, Nyquist, you're crazy. The corruption, they were not, the KGB and the Eastern Bloc services were not comfortable just recruiting people on the basis of their ideological beliefs. Because guess what? People can grow up and say, oh, I don't believe that anymore. I've become more mature. This communist ideology is crap. This is not going to do anything. It's just corruption. So they had to dirty people up. They had to make sure that there were dirty deals with their top agents in the West, with their friends. When somebody becomes a senator, by the way, and a president, and this was told to me by a defector, by a GRU defector, they no longer classify them as agents because now these people are too powerful to be agents because they could use their power to play back. So they call them friends and they have to treat them because they learned this during World War II when they were developing agents in the Third Reich in the United States. They had to be very careful because they had developed very high level people. If you look at the history of communism, people like Harry Dexter White, who was really running the Treasury Department under Henry Morgenthau during World War II, who
Mhm.
became,
Card carrying
Treasury Secretary.
communist.
And of course, we know he was a communist agent,
Yeah.
uh, right? So you have these powerful people. You have to be very careful. You don't want to alienate them, but you need to draw them with corruption. Well, here's the problem with corrupting people. This is why Bill Clinton told Boris Yeltsin, I can't do that. I can't give you Europe. Because all of these corrupt people, whether it's Scholz in Germany, Macron in Paris, Keir Starmer in London, or Biden in Washington, all of them with communist connections, background, Macron calling himself a Maoist when he first ran for president of France. These people are very bizarre. But why do they not just hand Europe? Why don't they just go over to Russia and China? Because they've got millions of countrymen who, if they started moving in that direction, their own bodyguards will pull out their pistols and shoot them,
Yeah.
which is what happened in Ukraine. Why did Yanukovych, the president, the Russian puppet running Ukraine, Why did he flee to Russia? Because, and this is the, I mean, this can't be proven, but this is the story that the Ukrainians have figured out, is that Yanukovych purposely provoked the Ukrainian people into the Euromaidan revolution so that he could say there's disorder in Ukraine and invite the Russian troops in. And when that moment came for Yanukovych, after he'd gunned down 100, the Heavens 100 in Maidan Square, when the moment came for him to publicly invite the Soviet troops in, his own bodyguard said, if you do this, we're not going to protect you, which is the same thing as saying, we're just going to let people kill you. And what did Yanukovych do? He went to he went to Crimea. He got on the Russian military base there and went to Russia from there. He fled. And so did the prime minister, so did governors, so did all kinds of people. It was the signal to run because the Russian troops weren't able to come. They annexed Crimea, they invaded Donbass under cover of, but that's what happened. That's why this Ukraine war is going on, why this has gone on for 10 years. Russia has to have Ukraine back in the empire in order to be an effective military power, because that's where their rocket engineers, their helicopter engines, that's where so much of their military industrial complex was from. And why they're having failed missile tests is that their best rocket engineers, they were being serviced by Ukrainians during this whole post-Cold War period. And then in 2014, that stopped. And what happened is the Russia is rotting from within because the Russians are so corrupt. And so Boris Yeltsin couldn't get Clinton because Clinton's thinking, they'll crucify me. I can't surrender the West to Russia. I can't do that. I can't evacuate. He realized his own self-interest because in the end, he was corrupted. And what are the Russians going to do? Expose him as their agent in revenge? Oh, if you don't do this, we're going to expose you as our guy. That would then destroy their whole strategy, all the other people that they were working with
Hmm.
in secret, because there'd be massive investigations. So it turned out to be a double blackmail. The blackmailed could blackmail the blackmailer and say, all right, expose me, see what it does for you, right? So you got this funny phenomenon of of the corruption backfiring as it does in Russia and China, where in China they go and look at their ICBMs and they're filled with water rather than rocket fuel, right? So you get this purge of the Chinese rocket forces generals. The corruption is eating them away, and they can't win this war. But what is their best trick? To use their friends in the West to get a treaty that they will be able to own Ukraine. And that is what they're pushing for. Does all this make sense?
Hmm. How do you
Because, yeah,
how does it all shift in light of Trump's win? How does it make it different? Does it make it different? Is it immune to it? Is there a major, I guess, I don't know, game board reset?
there's two schools of thought. So I have to be respectful because I don't know
Yeah,
the underlying truth, right? Because it's
sure.
so murky. We're in a wilderness of mirrors. We're in real time where there is uh we see things not just through a glass darkly, we just sometimes just don't see anything.
Wilderness of Mirrors is one of my favorite
Wilderness of
quotes.
mirrors.
It's
You
one of
look,
my favorite quotes.
yeah, you've got books like Putin's People and these other books that claim that Trump is a Russian puppet. We saw the Trump as a Russian puppet thing coming out of Hillary Clinton's mouth during the campaign in 2016. We then had the investigation of Trump. We had this, but they didn't come up with anything. Um, when you look at Trump's first wife Ivanka, yeah, maybe there were some connections with the Czech secret police there, but there was nothing. I mean, when Trump went to the Soviet Union in the 80s, he came back with some Soviet talking points. They tried to influence him a little bit, so they seem to have gotten a little influence out of him. But none of this points to him being a recruited agent or being under any kind of. I mean, Trump is, first of all, his personality, he's not a blackmailable guy. This guy will say anything. And will go past anything. He's independent. He just values his independence, right?
Yeah.
His freedom of action. I mean, you could see it in the guy. No, no, he's not recruitable. His characteristics are not of a type of person you could make into an agent of anybody. I mean, that's my analysis. But there's these people that say, look, he's got to be their agent. His business got money through the Russian mafia selling real estate. They were laundering money through urban real estate is what the Chinese triads do in Canada. And China's really penetrated Canada. I mean, when I was in Toronto, they were all saying, the whole Trudeau family is just an extension of China. So China's been taking over Canada. They've been taking over Mexico too, the Chinese and Russians, because they're surrounding us. But this thing about there's people that believe that Trump is going to betray Ukraine because ultimately he's being manipulated by Moscow. But then there's the other people that say, no, 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 he's not. This is not what he's doing. He is going to stick it to the Russians. And it's interesting that Trump picked General Kellogg to be his special envoy to the Ukraine proposed Ukraine-Russia peace talks to Kiev. And General Kellogg has said things like last April, oh, the Biden administration is not really helping Ukraine. It's a token. I mean, he said that in an interview with uh, Radio Liberty, not Radio, Voice of America last April. It was like the second question the interviewer asked was, about how great Biden was supporting Ukraine. And he just dressed the guy down. He says 31 tanks, you know, in more than 2 years of warfare, we give him 31 tanks in the biggest ground war in Europe since World War II, and that's support. 20 something HIMARS. I mean, he goes through it. He says it's token. And this leads directly into the what I was saying before about this corruption thing. You have Zelensky coming out now, what was it, in the last week or so, and saying, we supposedly got 177 billion, but we didn't. 100 billion of that we never got. And again, the counting, Kellogg has to say, oh, well, it was an internal thing because it's embarrassing. Where is our money going? But of course, it really backs up more what Kellogg was saying last April about this. And this is the problem. The people like the heads of the Democratic Party saying Russia, 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 and pointing at Trump as being the Russian guy. This is very funny because they were the people that did the Uranium One deal with Russia. These are the people that gave Russia billions to create their own Silicon Valley. These are the people that were helping Russia at every step of the way. And now these are the people that gave great pretense for supporting Ukraine, but they were really just scared of being discovered as Russian assets. They were covering their own tracks because if they really helped Russia take Ukraine, they would be caught in the aftermath because everybody knows this. These older guys like Biden, they know this history. They know, remember when we lost China? Remember this story? This is Joseph McCarthy Retreat from Victory. This
Hmm.
is this is the House Un-American Activities Committee about Alger Hiss and Harry Dexter White and the defectors like Elizabeth Bentley and Louis Boudin's and Whittaker Chambers outing the fact that Russia was loaded, I mean, that Washington was loaded with Russian spies, with Soviet spies. That we unveiled, this all got revealed because China fell. And I said, how did we lose China? How did the communists take over China? Who facilitated this? Right? General Secretary of State Marshall, or at that time, General Marshall, George Marshall, um, Harry Dexter White, Alger Hiss, these people that their their actions started to come under scrutiny, and there we started outing dozens of communists in the government. They had, I think, when they passed, what was the act called? Was it? There was a purge back then, and now under Trump, we're getting a similar purge. in the FBI and the Justice Department. You notice they're escorting, they had to use armed guards to escort. Some of these people wouldn't leave their offices in the Justice Department.
Wait,
These are the
when?
people that are investigating Trump, that are putting these false, right?
When was that?
In the last 3 weeks. I mean, since the
Really?
inauguration,
I didn't know
there's
that.
been, yeah, oh yeah, no, there's been pink slips given in the Justice Department. What I've
That's
heard now, maybe
amazing.
someone will correct me, that all of the people involved in the Mar-a-Lago raid in the FBI and Justice Department have been fired. Goodbye,
That's hilarious. They didn't leave.
right? And in the CIA, now this is the Tulsi Gabbard thing. This is the thing that, shoot, this stupid camera.
Yeah, it
I have
randomly
to go,
zooms in.
I have to get this thing back under control. Um, yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing with the Tulsi Gabbard thing that fascinates me because there's things whenever you see something that doesn't make sense, there's something going on that you're not supposed to know that is secret, that is explains it,
Yeah.
right? So at the CIA, they've done this thing where they said, basically, oh, gee, we're going to be looking into certain things, certain activities. You could get severance pay and get your retire or whatever you're entitled to and leave now, or you could stay and risk being fired later and getting nothing, right? This is what they're doing at CIA. So what is this investigation thing? I mean, and I haven't heard about anything out of the NSA or the DIA, but I'm assuming that's coming there too. So this Tulsi Gabbard nomination coming out of the blue, it doesn't make any sense because she doesn't seem to have any background in it. She seems to have come from the left and become a Republican. She's been pro Edward Snowden. He's a hero as a whistleblower. She would, and so I mean, really, you'd think the Republicans would be against her. The Democrats are doing the Russia, Russia, Russia thing. Hillary Clinton called her a Russian agent, and she's got a funny background. There's some funny people in her background. Again, Trevor Loudon will give you an earful of the very scary linkages in Tulsi Gabbard, but there's one thing about her that if you followed her hearings before Congress, that really caught my attention. When she's in the Army, she was put in a psychological warfare unit. And it's like, okay, if you're going to be in the Army and you're a psychological warfare unit, that's intelligence, right? That's psychological warfare. That's so
Really hot chick.
right,
Really hot chick. And
right. Yeah, no, she's hot, right?
somebody
She's the first,
somebody made a tweet about that like a month ago. They went, they go, tongue in cheek, going, I fear that in 2028, AOC is going to switch parties. She's gonna start wearing tight pants with a huge ass, and then she's gonna post a video of her in some combat kit doing a run through, doing an M4, sidearm run through, and everyone's just gonna switch sides and go, she's one of us now. And it's like all it really takes is a hot chick in tight clothes shooting guns, and you go, yeah, fuck it, she's Republican now. It's like
yeah,
that is I don't know enough about her to even comment.
yeah.
Just being completely honest, I just don't know enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I
Well,
mean,
well,
you
I
do
don't
have
think
to
any of
be
us know enough because
well
it's
to
the wilderness
just
of mirrors.
well. It's also just it's like no, but you have to be critical. Like she's in a psychological warfare unit,
Right.
and she comes
Right.
over and
But
she
but but
switches
think about it this
sides.
way, Tommy. If you were going to recruit somebody to be counterintelligence in a psychological warfare unit, wouldn't you recruit somebody with this left-wing background,
Hmm.
with these connections? Because why? Because she's going to be more effective if enemy the enemy believes she's their
Yeah.
girl, right? So that this introduces an element of ambiguity to what she's been doing all along and why she got picked for this thing. And this is the thing that I mean I don't know. I'm speculating and I'm just telling what things pass through my head, as silly as they might be. Um, what didn't make sense in this hearing was Edward Snowden, before the hearing, says publicly that Tulsi Gabbard should denounce him to help her get through to get appointed. It's a no-brainer. All she has to do is say Edward Snowden's a traitor. She goes into the hearing and she won't say it, and what she says is, yeah, he broke the law. She wouldn't use because traitor is is not really carefully defined in U.S. law. You know, it's adhering to the enemies of the United States, and I think that he is a traitor, but she wouldn't say so. I mean, I think it's clear he is a traitor, even though people can fuzz it up and say, "Oh no, he was a whistleblower." So why does she stick to this line and talk about the Fourth Amendment and talk about her plan, right? That there will be no more Edward Snowdens. Oh boy, this is really interesting because if she wanted to get nominated, she would have said, oh no, he's a traitor. But she didn't. And they passed her anyway, right? And I thought to myself in advance, I go, you know, if they pass her anyway, there's something wrong here. There's something we're not seeing. And they passed her, and I thought, okay, what is it? Look at her plan. If you have a plan, look, if you've got tons of moles and traitors in the NSA, in the CIA, and you're giving, and look at this pink slip, leave now or we investigate you. Or maybe tell us what you've done, right? It's just the same thing as the bodyguards telling Yanukovych, um, we're not going to defend you if you invite the Russian troops in for the unrest in the Euromaidan revolution. It's the same thing as saying, we know you're not on our side. We're going to find you out. So what do? They flee. They leave the NSA. They leave the CIA. They leave the FBI, whatever. They leave these agencies. And then we start going, okay, this one check, this one check, this one check. And then all of a sudden you're able to pressure people and say, tell us who the bad people are, the other bad people, and we won't put you in jail, right? This is flipping people. This is classic flipping. Well, how can you flip people if you denounce Edward Snowden as a traitor and not a whistleblower? Your goal is to create whistleblowers.
Hmm.
If you hammer Edward Snowden, these people aren't going to trust you. And what is her plan? That the people can come to me directly. She says this in the hearing. People can come to me directly. My door is open. Ooh, psychological warfare. Think about how deep the psychological warfare is here. This is not just a mole hunt. This is like the roundup of the cattle, right? It's like, come on, little doggies, come through this gate. Mama's waiting. She loves you. She's not going to call you a traitor. She's going to call you a whistleblower.
Hmm.
It's like, and they vote for her. These senators on this intelligence committee that voted for her, somebody sat them down and said, this is what this woman's going to do for us. And because she's from the left, they're going to trust her more to do that. You know, I believe a lot of the things that you believed in, you know. I'm not a traitor. I really love my country, right? I mean, this goes through my mind. Okay, Nyquist, you're crazy. This can't be what's going on, but we're seeing this right in front of our eyes. We're seeing this play out in real time. An attempt to really cleanse, which we need this cleansing, our intelligence services, our police, our Justice Department. And look, they're making her Director of National Intelligence. It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean, it
that's the
just
apex.
because you got a corruption. See, how do you fight corruption? How do you do it? How do you fight corruption at this level? It's a very delicate psychological thing because everybody's tempted to take the money or get the promotion or appease their bosses who are bad people, right? You look at how the FBI, this operation against Trump to make him look like a Russian puppet. Um, these are these are bad people, and you're working for them because they're managers in the FBI, right? These guys are managers. I mean, look at the head of the CIA under Obama. You know, how he. I mean, the weird thing he voted for Gus Hall for president, and they let him in the CIA anyway because he admitted it on a lie detector test. And oh, well, I guess he's being honest, but he gave a false explanation why he voted because the guy's obviously, I mean, you look at these people, so you have to cleanse. How many people have been brought into these agencies? You got to get out. So psychologically, it's a very delicate thing. People can dig in their heels and try to ride out the Trump administration and stay there and do their sabotage, or they can get really scared. But you have to get them somewhat scared, but you have to assure them that you're not going to throw the book at them, that they can come out and they can tell you privately, my door is open. Come and see me. See the nice lady. See the nice, pretty lady who was a representative from, the first Polynesian American to be in Congress, first Polynesian American woman to be in Congress. Sorry. Um, this is this is really good strategy, I think. If it is a strategy, it's good. If it's accident, it would be really funny if this was just all an accident, right? That this just looks like this because, you know, I'm trying to turn it over in my mind. You got Trevor Loudon there saying, no, no, she's bad. She's part of the communist agenda. And you've got people like Tucker Carlson. The story is that Tucker Carlson's the one that suggested her to be in this position to Trump. And we know Tucker Carlson is like now become a complete Russian agent, right? He interviews Putin and he's like a lapdog during the interview. He interviews Dugin. He interviews Colonel Douglas McGregor, who is one of the most egregious, pro-Russian apologists and propagandists. Oh, the war is over. Oh, the Ukrainians have lost. There's no point in reinforcing defeat. We're just killing Ukraine. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Ukrainians have no agency. Russia's already won on day 10 of the war. He says, oh, it's going to be over in 10 days. 3 years later, right? Why doesn't anybody call this fraud out? Why does he still get on to why how does Tucker Carlson see the thing is it's interesting. You've got people like Jack Posobiec and you've got a number of these people on the right that their talking points are too pro-Russian and they're against Ukraine. It's like cui bono, who does this serve? Why are they doing this? Have they been Russian propaganda and influence operations on the right, just like on the left. We used to call them useful idiots. They were on the left, they were always leftists or liberals. Now we got useful idiots on the right because the Russian propaganda is taking aim at the right. Putin's a Christian. He wears a cross. He's a nationalist, right? He's defending Western civilization. Oh, such rubbish. And people do fall for it. Nice people, good people, intelligent people fall for it. I don't want to really say that they're dummies because I know some of them and they're very smart.
Sure.
But they're not the levels of knowledge that you have to have about how the KGB operates, how Russian active measures work, how the communist movement is worked as an instrument of Chinese and Russian policy, and how the Red-Brown Alliance, how the Russians controlled the Nazi diaspora after World War II. Because all these Nazi officials knew the Red Army was coming, and the recruitment thing was, you'll be hanged unless you become our agent. And then how many go to South America? And why then are the neo-Nazi Peronistas aligning with the communists, right? Because the Nazi diaspora is there in Argentina. How does this happen? The Red-Brown Alliance. You notice the Golden Dawn Party in Greece snuggling up to the communists in Greece. You notice the AfD party, which is the closest thing to it, it's a far right party in Germany, having these relations with China now and being pro-Russian. You notice this with the right in France. And even a good person like Tommy Robinson doesn't understand how the Russians are trying to influence the European right or alt-right. Because the Russians realize they have to influence both ends of the political spectrum. They have to change conservatism. They have to change the right into a kind of right that can be converged with Marxism, with the future. This is what Alexander Dugin does, the Russian Eurasianist, the Putin's brain they've called him. But I think he's an instrument. He's running a giant network, especially in third world countries, to recruit traditionalists, conservatives, Muslims, Hindus, Orthodox Catholics, Buddhists, to recruit them to this giant anti-American, anti-Atlanticist campaign to destroy the West. And he says, look, we're the Telluric Empire, we're the Spartans, the Americans are the Athenians or the Carthaginians, right? You know, Carthago delenda est, therefore Carthage must be destroyed. It was a speech of Marcus Cato the Elder. He's to stand up in the Russian and sorry, in the Roman Senate and say Carthage must, he'd end every speech with Carthage must be destroyed. And though this has been years ago, this was really Dugin's cat call. No, it was his Cato call. It was his whole approach. And this is what he has been doing for more than 30 years with the Eurasianism and saying that we're Sparta, we're Rome. I mean, Russia as the third Rome. This goes back to Ivan the Terrible. The third international, the third Rome. You know, you see how these are merging together. And Putin actually describes Stalin in the Third International as a continuation of the Third Rome, as the Spartan power, you know, the land power against the naval power, right? Sparta is the land power. They're very Spartan. They have a very controlled society. They're fighting the Athenians, who are a democracy. You've got the Romans fighting the Carthaginian Republic. And the Carthaginians are a commercial empire again. And always he shows the commercial empire is doomed. So we're the world island. He calls it the last, one of his books is The Last War of the World Island. And he says what is coming is a war of continents, right? Look at what Russia's war preparations are, what China's war preparations are. China's expanding its amphibious fleet. Why is their Type 71 amphibious ship able to reach the West Coast on one tank of fuel from China? I kind of wonder about this. If you're going to invade Taiwan, why are you giving your amphibious transports this incredible range?
Yeah.
You know, and then you hear, you know, I was in, since I talked to you last, I was in Toronto at this conference on the Arctic in September, and I was able to have dinner with General Van Herk, the former commander of NORAD and NORTHCOM, and his Canadian deputies. And he described, and he gave a speech there where he described the weakness of North America's defenses. General Clancy, the Canadian general, gave a shocking lecture about how Russian bombers and missiles could penetrate us in great detail. That we that when these guys would go to Ottawa or Washington saying, "Look, we used to have 1,000 fighters to defend North America. Now we have, well, to use Van Herk's words, we have 24 fighters to defend North America. We have 40 ABM launchers to stop missiles. But worse than that, the Russians have long-range cruise missiles launched from submarines that can hardly be detected, that they keep 9 of these submarines off our coast at each time, 5 off the Atlantic coast, 4 off the Pacific coast. They can go months at a time without being detected, and they can launch these nuclear-armed cruise missiles." And he said to me, he said, we could try to shoot it down with a fighter plane, but that's very difficult because a fighter plane normally just has a very low chance of shooting down a cruise missile, let alone finding it, because they travel below the radar. You know, they come in very low. And then the Russians have these hypersonic missiles that they can fire from a Russian strategic bomber in Siberia. It goes way up in the atmosphere, then comes way down, and it travels supersonically, again, close to the ground. He said it can change directions. So we can't tell what target it's going to. And once it goes down, there's no way. An ABM shoots up. It can't shoot one of these things
Yeah.
down this down low. So this thing's going to make it to its target. And he said, and what makes it worse is Chinese strategic bombers are being based now in Russia, in Siberia, which really blew my socks off.
That's horrifying.
The Chinese and Russians are working together, and so Chinese and Russian aircraft are testing our Alaskan airspace across the Arctic.
Well, why
And
wouldn't
why?
they? Yeah, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, it's the right
Yeah,
move. Um,
yeah.
yeah, no, it's I hate and love the quote, "May you live in interesting times." But Jeff, like I told you beforehand, I think my Dayquil is wearing off. My head's starting
Hmm.
to pound, so I don't mean to unceremoniously wrap this
Oh,
up, but
that's good.
no, it's no, I mean I fucking love talking to you, man. I wouldn't keep having you back on. I just still feel like absolute junk. Um, but yeah, dude, I'd love to have you back on sometime, and yeah, I don't know. It's all moving so quickly that if things move quickly, it also means that there's openings for acceleration to bad endpoints. So that's certainly a variable to look after. But I don't know. I'm hoping that things can. I mean, I'm not naive. I know we're never gonna all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I get that. But I hope that there's just at the bare minimum. I hope at the very least, stop accelerating towards World War III. Like, I've lowered my bar so low to like what I want done in this administration, to where I'm like, let's just let's just slow down the march towards World War III. Great would be if we stopped it. Fantastic would be if we reversed it. But right now, I'm like, let's slow down the rate at which we're approaching that precipice, and that's I don't know if that's possible. Um, but yeah, I don't know, not to end it on a dooming note, but um,
Well, it can be good or bad. I think never make predictions, especially about the future. We're still
sure,
here, and
yeah,
Trump got reelected. There's hope, right? There's hope. The things are gonna get better. There's hope.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say that there is hope.
Yeah.
But
It's
dude,
it's not, yeah.
no, let's definitely do this again. Again, I'm sorry for kind of
Oh
closing
no,
it
we
up,
went
but
almost an hour. No, this is good. I mean, look, uh, I can rattle on for hours, so
no, 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 dude, it's awesome. No, this is not on you. I still feel like absolute drunk. But for anybody listening, please go to the description. Please go grab his books. Please go follow him on Twitter. And dude, don't be a stranger. Let's do it again.
no, yeah, we'll do it again, Tommy. There's so much happening.
Jeff, you're the absolute man, and tell your camera to behave. I need to get one.
Gosh, that thing doesn't, if I start moving my hands, it starts to zoom in on me, and I didn't even notice. I'm trying to look at the camera, and I
No,
didn't
you're
even
good. No,
notice.
no, no, it's not bad. No, it's impressive. I kind of want one.
Yeah, you
But
got
yeah,
to get an Ozbot, and you got to tell me. I'm so impatient. I got to tell me how these hand signals are supposed to work.
I don't have them. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea how that works. I have a
There's a
dumb
little
camera.
instruction book, and I lost it when I
I don't need
moved.
it. I don't want it. It's too much.
Yeah.
Um, but dude, thank you so much for your time. For everybody listening, please go to the description. Please go follow him on Twitter. I already sent it to you. But yeah, dude, let's do it again.
Okay. Take
All right,
care,
brother.
Tommy.
Mr. Jeff
Bye-bye.
Nyquist, thank you so much for your time. Guys, thank you so much for watching.